Hello, I am Kristen Gamble, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about Piaget and his stages of childhood and adolescent development. Our learning targets today, we hope that by the end of the lesson you will be able to recall information about Jean Piaget. You will be able to describe Piaget's theory of cognitive development, and that you will be able to identify the 4 stages of that development. We're going to go for it. First of all, who is Piaget? He was born in 1896 in Switzerland. He attended the University of Zurich in 1916, and he was really interested in psychoanalysis. Got married in 1923 and had 3 children, Jacqueline, Laurent, and Lucienne. And from that time that he had his kids from infancy, he loved to study them, and he got all of this information from those 3 children. He ended up dying in Switzerland, never leaving there, in 1980. Theory of cognitive development. This is kind of where the history of how he came up with it came from. In 1920, he was employed by the Binet Institute, probably very familiar to a lot of us. And he was hired to create a French version of the English intelligence tests that were happening at that time. He needed to translate them and make sure that they were equivalent to those English intelligence tests. He was very intrigued why children, not people, but children answered incorrectly, or why they gave the wrong answers to very logical questions. So he then knew, okay, there's a difference between children and adults and the way that they think. In 1936, he was the first psychologist to study this cognitive development. Some of the contributions that Piaget made were, of course, this theory of child cognitive development and those stages that we're going to talk about. Detailed observations of the cognition in children, and then, of course, a multiple of ingenious tests that talk about all of those cognitive abilities. So lots of contributions when he first started. So with the theory of cognitive development come 3 sort of concepts, and that's schemas, adaptation, and then of course the stages of cognitive development, which we will talk about later. So a schema is basically the building blocks of intelligent behavior, just a way of organizing what we know. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Adaptation are the processes that enable us to transition from one of the stages to the next that he talks about in the stages of cognitive development. We'll talk about adaptations in a little bit too. And then, of course, the 4 stages of cognitive development: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Okay, we're going to go into more detail of these 3 concepts. So a schema is a cohesive, repeatable action sequence that possesses component actions that are tightly interconnected and governed by a core meaning. It's a lot of words it's what we know how to do. So 2004, I'm sure somebody thought of this before, but in 2004, Barry J. Wadsworth finally wrote that think of it as filing cards in your brain that tell you how to do something. So if you wanted to brush your teeth, you would go to the brushing teeth filing drawer, and you would know that you start, you wet your toothbrush, you open the toothbrush, the toothpaste cap, you put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, you brush your teeth, you rinse the toothbrush, you rinse your mouth, you put everything away. That's the process of brushing your teeth, and that is a schema. And that is the script for brushing your teeth. And we have that for everything that we do, and we have to learn those things as we get older. Adaptations, there are 3 of them, and it talks about as you are getting older, you go through these processes, these three processes. The first is assimilation. you use an existing schema that you already know to deal with something new, something that's come up. So something you already know. Accommodation occurs when that schema that you already know isn't working. So you have to change what you know to have almost a new schema or a new thought. And then of course equilibration is where both of those are not working. We don't know what they're doing, and so we have to even it out and make it equal and make sense of it so it makes sense in our brain. I'm going to give you a little example of this. So we've got this man who is balding and he's got curly hair on the side. So a child sees this man and starts calling him clown, clown, clown. The father or the mother is devastated. That person's not a clown. But in his mind, in the assimilation part of adaptation, he sees this clown. He sees a man that's bald here and curly fuzzy hair. So that's the assimilation part. Now with the accommodation, we then teach that toddler, that boy, no, he didn't have the makeup on, he didn't have the red nose, he didn't have the outfit on, he wasn't doing silly tricks. He's not a clown. He's just a man that's bald with long hair on the sides. Now we learned more about the clown, so that's the accommodation. Equilibration, later on down the road, he has now assimilated and accommodated those two differences. So that is how the adaptation, we go through those processes. Now, the stages of development, there's going to be two parts because there's 4 stages, but I couldn't put them all on one page. So part 1, we have the sensory motor stage, and that is when you're first born to about 2. And this comes from where we all know that object permanence word. We start to learn that the child knows that even if I can't see that object, if it's on the other side of the door, if it's gone, it still exists. And that happens in this sensory motor stage.